What is my one asset and qualification to speak to you is a very long memory going back to when I started journalism in 1969. And that allows me to put things in some sort of a dinosaurial historical perspective. And many things come up which contradict some of the things that you have said. Some of you have said, and possibly will add and accentuate some of the things you have said by giving it its historical roots. The first thing I want to say is, and this is something that we are very fancy, that we are influencing society, including goading it to violence. Historically, it's not true. Society impinges on media. Society shapes media by providing its personnel, by providing its thematic field, by providing it the space in which to function. Without that, there would be nothing for the media to work on. The second is, governments use the media and to an extent are used by it. And the media has a propensity to ally itself with government and those in authority, kings, kuberts, whatever, who is ruling behind the scenes and in actual fact. The media aligns with those people almost as second nature. And third, do not mock your media, that they take their information and guidance, and sometimes they pay from the Inter-Services Intelligence, ISI. Some of the biggest names in Indian journalism, contemporary journalism, and the past, have been people who took their pay from the Intelligence Bureau, from the Central Bureau of Investigation, and shame from the Research and Analysis Wing, the pariah, raw, the warmonger. I could go on, and some of these also masquerade as very secular journalists. And don't you laugh, Manoj. You know them as well as I do. Then the contradictions. What is this media? What are we talking about? What is this animal? What media? We've been talking it since morning, and I've been talking of it for 45, 46 years now. What is this media? Whose freedom are we talking of? Who do we want to train? I asked that question. Do we want to reach out to the Interpress Union? You want to reach out to NRAM and all the owners? And you want to reach out to Murdoch? You want to reach out to the editors? You want to reach out to the Mufassil correspondents? This young man who writes for a Pakistani paper from Nepal? What is this media that we are talking of? It's so complex. Whose freedom? The Constitution of India gives it. Nobody's freedom. It's an individual's freedom for speech, for expression, which is translated into the freedom of the press. There is no legal freedom of the press, which is one reason why the Press Council is totally toothless, gutless, and absolutely has no hormones to motivate it. Please note that I'm using very polite terms. A journalist's wife got raped in Orissa because he was writing about poverty and about hunger deaths in Orissa long ago. Not very long ago, but long ago. No redress, nobody really got punished. And that was to punish all the Mufassil media in Orissa. But there are more than a dozen journalists, reporters, and editors who are members of parliament, both on behalf of the Bharatiya Janata Party, the currently ruling, and the Congress, which was ruling in the past. Which is not to, I'm not delinking media and the politics. My generation and the generation before me, we talked of Nikhil Chakravarti and Editha Narayanan, were linked with politics. They were left-wing journalists, so it is not a crime really. Ideology and a journalist adopting an ideology is not per se a crime. It should not. It should in fact encourage him to report on the poor. I mean, I have always said on Facebook, I'm a very biased journalist, biased in favor of the victim, biased in favor of the poor. In all my life, I've never interviewed a rapist to ask him, why do you rape? I've always interviewed the victim, poor victim, including journalists who have got beaten up and arrested. And I got arrested for a very funny reason, not because of my daring do, but because I'm a trade unionist in journalism, and we were agitating for the salaries and the continuity in service of the journalists and the staff of the National Herald, then and still owned by the then ruling party, the Congress. And they wouldn't pay them. And some of us went to jail for that. They still have not paid them, by the way. But the point I mentioned that was, there is really no protection for the media under law, under its component laws, not just expression. Expression is just one of the many laws that control the media. Electricity, salaries, continuity of service, protection from libel, and many other complex economic and other issues that come in, which are controlled by other laws. And corporatization then becomes relevant only in that issue. Second is, we are a highly communalized society, South Asia. Whatever happens in one part immediately impinges on the other. 1947 was a bloody, violent thing at par with the Israeli Holocaust, really. 500,000 Muslims were killed, 500,000 Hindus were killed. But if you were to ask any journalist in India, he thinks no Muslim was killed in India. None at all. And this is what they've been bred on, this is what they've read, that reflects in what they say. And it becomes very easy because of the other reasons. I talked to you about the journalists who are in parliament. But the average salary of a Mufassil correspondent in a small village or a taluka town in an area is between 3,000 to 5,000 rupees a month. And some of the anchors, and you're an anchor here yourself, get 1 crore to 2 crores a month in New Delhi. That is the range. What does the Mufassil correspondent do then? How can he be influenced? Whose freedom are we talking of a starving journalist? We have seen in India, and this, Manoj, this is not the worst time in India in terms of targeted violence. I never use communal violence. I always use targeted violence because the minorities don't retaliate. It's not two communities at war. It's one community being attacked by another community to confirm, or to be a slave, or to be a third wife, to be used as a stock for whatever purpose it serves, even to give the image of India being a vibrant democracy, so secular as enshrined in the Constitution. Government has communalized it. And I want to point out two issues. While Gujarat 2002, all of us, including John Dayal, talk about it as a major violence. It wasn't a major violence. Ahmedabad 1969 was much worse. And many violent acts in UP and Bihar have been terrible. People have been murdered by the thousands and buried in ponds. The bodies exhumed days later. Manoj knows it, I know it, Ram knows it. The rest of the younger people possibly don't know it because there's a violence after television came into being, and there's a violence and a criminalization before channel television came into being, and that nobody really knows about, and nobody wants to go into history to find out, do comparative analysis and learn lessons from that. That is something very different. We don't want to learn lessons from history. And how does the government communalize society? Apart from Taliban's and Kashmir violence and you sending in terrorists to kill all of us in Bombay, it leads to a massive evangelization of the Hindu community in India. That's a fact. But government has been guilty of sowing the seeds. The government of India, more than the government of England, has tested the impact of mass media on society and how you can impassion it, how you can make it more passionate, how you can motivate it, how you can satiate it, what palliatives can you give. It was called the Site Instructional Television Experiment, which was done in 84,000 villages during the Indian emergency under force, where they evaluated it. And That is one thing that you get. Why did 84 violence took place? Because you showed Indira Gandhi's body on television for 3 days. For 3 days you're showing a dead body of a woman, wonderful person called Durga by the BJP for partitioning Pakistan, and you show her body riddled with bullets, covered in a red shawl. As his book says, the earth did shake. Manoj, congratulations on that wonderful work. I wish I had written it. My first book came in 1977 on India's Indira Gandhi's emergency, and I'm just linking 2 generations of journalists. Sight led to 2 major innovations in Indian media history. Ramayana and Mahabharata were shown across the country and also possibly in Nepal at state expense. It was the first time religious teaching, catechism as we Catholics call it, Iron Peter, was done at state expense. So what do you expect? What do you expect? The society of a journalist, of a media. Hinduism is the default religion of India, and make no doubts about it. You go to the Supreme Court registry, some of you are lawyers, and in the registry, at the reception, you will find calendar art of the Hindu pantheon. I complained to the registrar once. I don't know if it's been removed now. He says you couldn't do a thing. It was done by the staff and they would do something about it. Now, what does this lead to? It leads to media taking sides. Punjab violence would not have exacerbated so much, and possibly Indira Gandhi would still be alive, if the media had not polarized itself on the issue of Khalistan. The Hindu media, owned by the Papas, the non-Sikhs, was one of the most communal media I have seen in my life. Punjab Kesari and the other media were vicious. No Wahhabi media can match them. The Sikh media matched them. That tradition, unfortunately, continues. And I'm not talking of the Times Now debate, where Arnab Goswami thinks of himself not only as government of India, but as the caretaker of the Hindu psyche, of the Indian psyche. 5,000 years of Mohenjo-daro thing. He speaks the language of the government, of the majority community. He swallows, and so does the media. Every time the police says, every time there's an explosion, the police say, I did it. And the media forgets its basic, simple grammar, that it is an allegation. It's a suspect, it's not a criminal. They swallow it. The same police, which can take years to find out who robbed my house, who raped so-and-so's daughter, will take 30 seconds to identify the perpetrator of a bomb blast and say it's an IM. And we swallow it. And some of the best names in Indian editorial business swallow it, and they pontificate on that. And this we need to think about. How do we handle that? I'm not surprised that FORB, the Dalit issue, the Dalit Christian issue, the Dalit Muslim issue, get such short drift. And there, let me just compare and contrast the ground situation in India. We talked about the media, Ram talked about the media coverage of the Gujarat riots. I think I was the treasurer of the Editors Guild of India when 2 of our members went to Gujarat and filed this excellent report. Gujarat took place in the glare of channel television. Kandamal, the worst incident of targeted violence in the history of Christianity in India, after this tiger of Mysore took Catholics from Mangalore and Goa and marched them to captivity to Srirangapatnam, killing 70,000 of them. After Tipu, it was the worst violence, but it took place outside the glare of the media. It took me 40 days of campaigning, of emailing, before a correspondent of the Hindu wrote that a nun had been raped. I and Father Ajay and all of you, thanks to CSW, our gratitude, we're still struggling to get the full details out. We took Manoj there so we could use his forensic journalism so that it could come out. We still have to do the last word on Kandamal, 2008, 2007 actually. It's outside the glare, very selective, very, very selective media. And I think something needs to be done about it. I wanted to talk about regional press, but he has covered it well. So let me just go to something about Islamophobia in India. There is a Wahhabization in India, that's a reality, very much. And some of the $10 billion that Saudi has spent on Wahhabizing the rest of the world, quite a large chunk of it has also come to India. There's no doubt on that. And that is one of the contributing factors, but not the only contributing factor to a massive Islamophobia in India. And I would not have minded it if it were confined to the Hindu community. Islamophobia is alive, thriving, and rampant in the Christian community and in the Catholic community among the Christians. The Buddhists are Islamophobic, the Sikhs are Islamophobic, the Jains always were, the Parsis. I had a colleague, I will not name her because I'm on TV. We were colleagues in a paper, and she's a Parsi, and she told me last night I was on my roof banging the plate with a spoon because the call had come from the RSS, bang your plates to protest against X thing about the Congress government. And I said, that X thing is communal, it is interreligious. You are a Parsi, you're not a Hindu, you're not a Muslim. Where do you figure into this thing? You know the person too. And then government sent me on a small commission to Gujarat after one of the massive anti-Muslim violence there. And I was sitting there with my two colleagues in a darbar sort of court, and all these people came with their petitions. And the Parsi community of Surat came with petitions. And of all the petitions that we read, theirs was the most severe, the most vicious against the Muslims. So Islamophobia has permeated all the other minority groups of India, and that gets reflected in the media. How do we explain that? And that is something that needs to be explained. And therefore, when government does funny things, the media does not investigate. Our media does not interrogate the government. Our media does not interrogate non-state actors. It just reports them. When occasionally I teach journalism, when we say avoid he said, she said brand of journalism. Go deeper in that. But media is government said this, IB planted it, RSS said this. Nobody dared question them. And this is so apparent when the same roaring tigers of Channel TV, and I come on Channel TV as a source, as a participant when I'm being questioned, and as a complainant. The same people who are so violent against a Muslim minister or layperson or a Maulvi when he's on a channel, they are vicious. They'll tear him apart. Are such pet kittens when they are, on the rare occasions that RSS, Shiv Sena, Bajrang Dal, VHP people, when they come, when the head of the Shiv Sena came, some of the biggest names in Indian journalism with salaries of 10 million is 1 crore, 100 million rupees a year, those salaries were behaving like pet puppies in the laps. I was ashamed to call myself a journalist. This is how you behave? Because not only are they powerful people, they can send their goons and smash your studios, and you're afraid of that. Whereas the poor Muslim, he can't do that to you, and therefore you can ride him. Nobody's investigated the love jihad. Nobody's investigated it. The Christian press of Kerala, and I'm partly Telugu, partly Malayali, they bought the love jihad thesis and expanded on it without ever investigating. No database. They never questioned why do girls from the Christian community marry outside. They don't explain why is the Malayali dowry system so high and how does the church benefit from the dowry system. They didn't want to question that. They didn't want to question the fact that the boys aren't as, they don't have a PhD and the girl has a PhD. That women in Kerala have the highest suicide rate in the country, despite 100% education. They don't want to question that. And they don't want to question the next step. It is love jihad within the Christian community. The Catholic Church particularly, and all other major churches, are worried sick and are issuing bans from the pulpit, Manoj. A Catholic shall not marry a non-Catholic. So those of you who are Protestants and evangelicals, I shouldn't be in this room with you. You aren't as much followers of Christ as I am. Denominational love jihads, denominational discrimination. But the court allows that. The court ruling in the Supreme Court is that the law protects not only religions, but denominations also, within the religion. So the Seventh-day Adventist has its own right to do whatever it wishes to do, so on and so forth. I think one of the biggest issues with Indian journalism, and I say that as a senior of the profession, is we have lost our faculty. We have been emasculated beyond imagination in a basic task of questioning. We don't ask questions anymore. You would have seen on TV, how does this young little puppy of a reporter, how does he say or she say? But sir, don't you think? And my editor would have kicked me in the backside if ever I phrased a question, don't you think? What can I answer? No, I don't think. What is an answer to a question, don't you think? They don't question, they want to know. Sir, what do you have to say about this situation? How did it happen? What is your database? Did you go to the spot? Did you hear it? Nobody wants to ask this question. There is something very deeply rotten in the guts of the media today. And money has nothing to do with it. Training has nothing to do with it. All of them have now PhDs, and a lot of Catholic priests have PhDs from Rome and from the London School and from Columbia. It is not training. There is something we have lost in terms of our spine and what the old school media wanted to do. We don't want to change society. We don't want to reform society. We don't want to improve the quality of life of our fellow human beings. For most of us, it's a job. Today, we are reporting FRB. Tomorrow, we'll be reporting agriculture with the same elan, taking our cues and our data information from the same sources. There is absolutely no commitment. And some of the worst questions I've faced, asked on gender violence are by women reporters. The callousness shown to a fellow human being by all of us is legendary now, and I think something should be done about it. So when we find out what role can media play in the reportage, in the documentation, in the analysis, how do we document it? These are questions that are worthy of it. I was part of the larger committee which helped draft the now totally aborted and dead bill to prevent communal and targeted violence, which remains something very good which the rest of South Asia can follow. We did think about what role can we put on the media. And we worried if a corporatized media, if a media where the journalist, poor chap, is purchasable because he gets 3,000 rupees and is not even committed. How will he become an instrument of peace between communities, of justice and dignity for religious and other minorities and marginalized people? There was no answer. I hope we will start a process of trying to find such answers, otherwise the future would be very tough. And lastly, I want to complete it. social media today is an industry, no less than large media. Mr. Modi and Reliance and a section of the Islamic Church in India have entire air-conditioned rooms with 100 computers with people doing nothing else but. Is that the social media we are talking of? Organized, commercialized, using not committed people but staff? Can we compete with that? Can a lone John or a lone Asha or a lone Manoj compete with that in the huge sphere and environment in which social media functions? These are questions that we need to ask. Thank you for this opportunity and congratulations for organizing such meetings. And these meetings need to be replicated 1,000,000 times in this subcontinent of ours. Thank you very much.